All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get rolling here. I know there are only a few of you guys on here right now, but we're going to go ahead. I'm going to roll from the live stream document and get through as much as we can. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and pop in the chat. I believe it's over here for y'all. And I'll be reading that as well as reading down through the document that was posted earlier today. We're just going to kind of knock out some questions that you guys had moving for our test tomorrow. So let's start up with the live stream document that I have right now. The first question is, what is the extra credit for the test? Now, remember, we do offer extra credit for every test. This test, you're going to have extra credit on the exam, okay? So you'll have it day of, and that will be your chance to earn your extra points. That's because this is the last week of the grading period, and you don't really have time to work on an extra credit assignment as a whole thing. So to kind of alleviate some of that pressure from you, we're trying to go ahead and just pop it on the day of. So that'll be, think about major overarching ideas and key lists that you may have had from this unit. Lists of 5 or 6 things long. Think about those and think about how to potentially memorize those key lists. And that'll help you out a lot. All right, so the next one that we've got. What are the main characteristics that we need to know about the dynasties? When we are talking about the dynasties, I assume that we're talking about China. So let's go ahead and pop through those. Sub-question to that is, what was the chronological order of the dynasties? So when we're looking at the dynasties in China, there are 3 big ones that we talked about for this unit. 2 of them are kind of before, and 1 of them melds into the unit before it starts to kind of collapse pretty soon after 1200. So here you have the Sui, Tang, and Sung dynasties. All 3 of them are going to be important for different reasons. The Sui, for example, reunified China after the 3 states period, where following the collapse of Han, everything was kind of a mess for a while. So the Sui reunify it, and very similar to the Qin, they reunify using pretty harsh tactics. In addition, they do build infrastructure. Specifically, they start the Grand Canal, which is going to be finished by the Tang and utilized heavily by the Sung. So the Sui do that mostly using coerced labor. The biggest thing about that Grand Canal is that it connects North China, which is needing military help, with South China, which needs some extra food. So they help each other out big time there. In addition, during this time frame, I think it was during the Sung Dynasty, that you find the champo rice, that fast-growing rice from in modern-day Vietnam. A fast-growing rice enabled China to have a huge population boom because it yielded way more crops way quicker. So that almost doubled the amount of crops and consequently the amount of people that China had at that time. So those, I think, would be the 2 biggest points about China. That, in addition to China being kind of the center of the world at this point. China is where everybody wants to be trading with. And even towards the tail end, when Europe finally kind of decides to join the stage, they also want to trade heavily with China. They're getting that first taste of it. We're going to see that kind of evolve over the course of our next unit. What are the aspects of the America and African state building notes you'll need to look over? Subpoints there, key points for Africa, and what are the specific trade routes that are going to be on the test? All right. So the key aspects of America, let's talk America first, and then we're going to talk about Africa. The key points that you need for this test for America is kind of how the states ended up building, the big systems that were in place, and the geographic features of those empires. Like, for example, the Inca were very unique because the Inca had to build everything in the mountains. So rather than like a lot of other places that we find that kind of become part of their geography, the Inca makes the geography part of what they need. So they build large rope bridges across the mountains and valleys. They build a large road network, so much so that they're able to actually make an empire in the middle of mountains, which is unheard of at this point in Afro-Eurasia, really. Yeah, I mean, it happens, but it's not on this level of intricacy. So the Inca are very interesting because of the way that they change their geography. So basically what you need to know about that is how do they utilize their geography? How do they actually build these vast infrastructural networks, namely with the Inca, again, through the Mi'ah system? And you kind of need to be focused in on how they maintain power. So the Inca maintained power through that network of roads and through in system of taxes, the Mitna system, and through keeping track of everything with things like the quipu. So that would be, for example, on the Inca. If you were to do the same thing with the Mexica, what do their societies place value on? How do they build their infrastructure, and kind of in what ways do they gain and maintain power? That's the key point for state building. If you were to apply that to Africa, you'd find very much the same thing. Your African empires that you guys are going to find in West Africa, you've got Mali, Ghana, and Songhai. All of them, how do they gain power? How do they maintain it? How do they lose it? What economic system do they have in play? What are they trading? All of those are the things that you really need to be focusing in on, as well as for the Swahili coast. How do they gain their power? How do they maintain it? What do they trade? Those are the things that really will help you to understand what the empire places value on and why certain aspects of it are the way, the way that they are. Our next one. Of all the civilizations on the global tapestries, which ones do we really need to know? Because, like, what are half of these? Can you do some key points in Southeast Asia was the subpoint there. Guys, the review page that we passed out, that was everything for Unit 1. That's to say that that is a list more so than it is a review. Now, on that list, there are a lot of things that we covered briefly. There are a lot of things that are lumped together as key points of a major large issue. So ideally, with the civilizations that you guys are looking on, some of them we haven't covered yet because we're going to really be able to hit on them harder in Unit 2. But for the majority, you need to focus on the key state building or the empire building ones that we've looked at. So, for example, the Byzantine Empire and kind of how they've spread or how they've contracted. You need to focus on Islamic empires and caliphates. You need to focus on African and American state building. Southeast Asia, there are a lot of the empires that are there that are lumped under the large term of Southeast Asia. For that, we're comfortable with you guys having an idea of what's going on there in kind of the broad strokes. So you don't need to necessarily know every key aspect of the Majapahit Empire. But you do need to know Southeast Asian characteristics such as the spread of Buddhism and monasticism, as well as the rise of new Buddhist tendencies, clashing with the Hindu tendencies that are already there, and then later also clashing with the Islamic tendencies of the world. Next up, key points in Southeast Asia. Again, Southeast Asia, we're talking about the blending and syncretism of different religions as well as cultures, and the fact that Southeast Asia is very focused in on trade and alliances with those larger South and East Asian entities. Specific technologies that you guys need to know. You guys need to know technologically, you need to know the technologies that help empires grow and help facilitate trade. So, for example, in the Song Dynasty, they come up with that sea compass. That's going to be instrumental, no pun intended, for our next unit in all of this different kind of trade that they're going through. In addition, you need to be aware of the invention and use of paper money. Again, we're going to find that in the Tang Dynasty and really solidified through the Song Dynasty. That's also going to play a major role in upcoming times. Let's see, you have the lateen sails. Those are the sails that allow you to sail against the wind, and dhow ships. Those are from our last unit. Those are still key aspects. Our next unit, we're going to see some other ships that kind of blow up in proportion. I'm trying to think of other technologies that you guys need to know. Architectural aspects are going to kind of be lumped under technology here, I think. Architectural aspects that you guys really need to focus on, you need to focus on the way that they use arches, how arches in Gothic architecture differ from arches in Islamic architecture, how Islamic architecture changes based on the region that it's in, because again, just like the religion that syncretizes as it goes, so too does the architecture and cultural aspects of that religion. So you need to be able to see that. Trying to think of any like specific inventions y'all need to know, other than sea compass, writing systems. For the most part, those should just about cover it, but make sure to kind of glance over everything one more time. I believe those are the ones that you really need to hit because they're going to make more of a difference in the next round. but I'm not going to say that those are the only ones that'll be on the test, because that's not what this is for. This is more to kind of explain specific answers to your questions. So for now, I'm going to say that those are our big key ideas. Do we need to know specific things about religions? If so, what? Guys, again, this isn't really for me to say what's going to be on the test, but more for me to answer questions that you guys have about the material regarding the test. So for example, with religions, the big ones that we're going to cover in this unit, we had Islam, the expansion of the Islamic Empire. So you need to be familiar with the key tenets of Islam, as well as how it's syncretized with other areas. You need to know Buddhism and how it changes as it moves as well. It syncretizes as it moves. Confucianism, and more specifically the syncretized version of Neo-Confucianism, that'll also be a big one. Any specifics from the Islamic unit that we need to know? Like I said, I'm not really here to say what's going to be on the test. I'm simply here to answer big questions. So if you want to talk about Islam, you're looking into the architecture, the key tenets, and you need to make sure that you know how the empire spread, the different methods that the empire used to spread, and how it treated other religions, as well as how it's syncretized as it moves. All of those are fair game. Let's see. A few tips I have for, what words on the global tapestry paper do we need to know about for the test, or will be in the passages? I know you're going to say all, but which ones of all do we need to look at closer? For that, guys, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you look at our vocab list that we gave you. I would recommend that you highlight the ones that you immediately know the answer to and focus on the ones that you don't. So for example, if you see filial piety, which is the first one on that list, you see filial piety and you say, okay, that's the respect for elders. Highlight it, you know exactly what it means. You don't need to be able to give me a dissertation on it. You don't need to give an essay on it, but you do need to be able to tell me what that concept is about. If you can do that, go ahead and highlight them out. All of them are going to be important for the AP test, and most of them are going to be important for our units coming forward. I don't have the list in front of me right now. Give me like 2 seconds, and I'll grab it. No. Content vocabulary, you do need to know just about all of that's going to be on the exam. All of that is testable. And as far as academic, all of those are fair game too. I'm sorry that I can't help narrow it down any further than that. This list is kind of already a condensed version of everything that's in the unit. I would focus on the ones that you guys have trouble with. Is a big one. A few tips that we have for, number 9, give us the answers point blank, period. I'd love to, but then it wouldn't help you any. I need you guys to kind of see where you're at. I need to know if you know this stuff. Guys, I don't give you a test because I want to punish you. I give you a test because I need to see where you guys are at for that big test way in the future. I'm trying to build you guys up, and the only way I can do that is if I know what you need help with. Excuse me. Cade just asked if we could put the list on the screen so we could take a screenshot. Cade, if you go through the Google Classroom, we do have this document posted up there. That way, if you guys want, you can like watch it as we're going. Last year, I had kids that would, as we were going through it, take notes on it. That's fine too. Basically, that's just kind of a collaborative document that we can all work on together. But that's through the test, through the Google Classroom. You should be able to access it through the live stream posting. A few tips that I have for trying to eliminate answers on the test. First things first, try to figure out what the question's asking. If you can figure out what the question's asking, that'll help you to eliminate obvious incorrect answers. I would try to eliminate one completely wrong answer immediately. Following that, I would probably start then looking for factual inconsistencies. So look at the question, look at the answers. If the answer doesn't answer the question, it's probably wrong. Or if the answer is wrong, if it has something that's just not factually right, then I eliminate it immediately too. Generally, what you'll find is that you'll be able to narrow it down to 2 answer choices that are mostly right. And then at that point, you'll find one that's just more right than the other one. That's the easiest way to kind of narrow it down. Do we need to know the places in the review sheet that we never talked about? No. There are a few different things in the review sheet that we've paused until Unit 2 because they make more sense there. So we're going to go ahead, and if you haven't ever heard of an item, look it up really quickly to make sure you're not mistaken. Just a quick Google. And if we haven't really talked about it, don't worry about it yet. But that's a very, very rare case. I think there are two civilizations that we didn't talk about on this list. Yep, just 2. So everything other than that is fair game. The 2 that we haven't talked about yet are the Mamluks and the Hausa. And we'll talk about why we put those off until next unit. All right. And Sheldon, the Bhakti movement, we're also going to talk about that more for our next unit. We referenced it earlier, but you don't need to worry about that just yet. We're getting close to that though. So I'm going back to the beginning of the live stream review now. I've knocked out all the ones that are on the document. So now I'm just kind of addressing direct questions from you guys. So for example, Chapa asked, how did Ghana and that region grow? Well, Ghana grew through trade. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm still having trouble speaking. Ghana, Mali, and Songhai all grew through trade. Now, if you recall, North Africa and South Africa both did a lot of trade using gold. They brought in salt. So with Ghana and Mali, they start to grow and gain a lot of wealth through that trade, and they also gain a lot of influence through that trade. That's why they start to become those large empires that you guys are familiar with. In addition, they do kind of bump into the Islamic Empire and become Islamic themselves. So part of the key point to why they grew so large was that spread of Islam as well, that feverish spread of it. Which religions had ministaries, asked Sheldon. The religions that had missionaries, monasteries, the 2 big ones that you guys need to know, Christianity and Buddhism. If they are going to be missionaries, it's one of those 2. For Islam, it spread mostly through Sufis, through conquest, and through trade. But Christianity and Buddhism, they mostly spread through that missionary role, to where they would basically send out people to convert, to spread the word, to start up monastic life. They shared a lot of characteristics in that regard. The vocab sheet. I will check to see that that's on Google Classroom. I did have them physically handed out to you guys. I passed each one of you guys a copy. And you need to be keeping up with stuff like that. But I'll go ahead, and this time I'll go to Google Classroom and I'll post a digital copy of it. But next time, if I pass something out, I don't have extraneous information. I don't have any information that's not valuable to you in some way, shape, or form. Oh, you guys were out. Okay. You know, that makes sense. Next time, make sure you ask me what you guys, if you had any handouts. But for this time, I'll go ahead. I'll post that on the classroom for everybody, and I'll make sure that you guys get those. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it open for about another couple of minutes here, see if anybody has any lingering questions. Other than that, we've wrapped up with the list that I've got, and I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, now's the time to go ahead and type it up. As you guys are doing that, I'm going to go ahead and post this review page in your classroom so that I don't forget to do so. Benjamin, I don't think that we can do unrelated questions right now. They're taking a large test tomorrow, so let's go ahead and try and keep it on point. All right, guys, if there are no more questions in the next minute, I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Y'all sure? No more questions? I'm good to move on. Well, all right then. I'll go ahead then. I'll start shutting this down. One of the biggest things that I want to ask you guys to do, though, is tonight get some sleep. Sleep is the most important thing. Do not stay up until midnight studying because everything is going to kind of Play-Doh out of your brain if you do it that way. Make sure you get some sleep. Make sure you get some good food. Take a deep breath. It's just a test. You're not going to remember this thing in 20 years. You're not going to remember it in 5 years. It's just a test. You guys will do fine. Just remember, deep breaths, focus on it. You guys have the knowledge. You guys have the skills. You guys got this. All right, guys, you have a wonderful night. I will see you all bright and shiny tomorrow.